All right, guys, welcome back. Our next project is going to be using watercolor. So what we're going to do this week is do a little practice of a couple different techniques. I have made this website for you here. I'm going to walk you through it real quick and go over the assignment, but you'll be able to look through this website too to remind yourself if that's easier for you. The beginning part of this goes over some basic watercolor techniques. Wet on dry and wet on wet. Wet on dry is basically either you have dry paper and you're using wet watercolors on top, or you paint with watercolors, wait until they are completely dry before you paint on top of them again. Wet, on the other hand, is when you have wet paper and you're adding wet watercolors on top, or you've painted some color with watercolors and before it's dry, you add another color to it. You can see for the wet on dry, the colors will mix together. You see this pink and yellow made this orangey color, but the colors have still nice sharp edges between the two. Okay. But when it's wet on wet, the pink color bleeds and kind of flows into the wet yellow that's underneath. All right. So both of these techniques are good. You just have to decide when you want to use each one. All right. After these basic techniques, we've got a couple advanced techniques where you do some wet on wet painting and then you sprinkle some salt on top. And what the salt does is it absorbs some of that pigment and moisture from the watercolor. And when it's completely dry, you can brush off the salt and it leaves this very interesting pattern. Okay, that's the salt technique. The plastic wrap technique, again, starts with a wet on wet watercolor painting. And then you crumple up and lay down some plastic wrap on top of it and let it dry completely, which also gives you a very interesting texture to it as well. All right, third, we have the oil pastel resist, where you can draw with a white oil pastel. You have to push pretty hard to make sure you coat the paper as much as you can with your lines. But then when you paint watercolors over the top, the watercolor paint will not stick to the areas that you've drawn on with the oil pastel. All right, and the very last advanced technique here is clean water lifting, where you have a watercolor painting that's completely dry, and you take some clean, clear water on your brush, and you paint on top of the watercolor that's already there, and it will lift some of that pigment off of the page, and you can actually make some interesting designs with that. All right, so you've got 6 designs total. 2 basic and 4 advanced techniques. All right. For the assignment, you're going to take a half sheet of paper. You're going to divide it into 3 sections with some tape. And in each one of those sections, you're going to show me a different watercolor technique that we just talked about. All right. Now there's 6 to choose from, but you only need to show me 3. Okay. So in my example here, the first area I did the plastic wrap. The second area, I did the salt technique. And the third area here, I did the wet on dry, where I painted this yellow to orange, let it dry completely, and then painted the black on top of it. That's why it's not bleeding into the other colors. And you can see the finished result here when I take off the tape. And that's what I'd like to have from you by the end of the week. All right. Check out the website yourself if you need to, or rewatch this video. And if you have any other questions, that's when you come talk to me. Good luck.